English, Hindi?
Both. Whatever you're comfortable with. I'll be asking questions in English and Hindi both. So whatever you're comfortable with. Okay, good afternoon to everybody and a very happy Ambedkar Jayanti to all. Welcome to the Outlive webinar series. My name is Arjun Kapoor and I work with the Center for Mental Health, Law and Policy at the Indian Law Society. Just to give you a quick background about Outlive, Outlive is a 4-year youth suicide prevention program, which is being jointly implemented by Sangath, Center for Mental Health, Law and Policy, and Quicksand Design Studio. And this is supported by Comic Relief UK. Outlive essentially seeks to address urban youth suicides in the cities of Delhi, Mumbai, and Pune, specifically amongst young people within the age group of 18 to 24 years. And Outlive seeks to do this in 3 different ways. Over the next 4 years, we'll be working and engaging with young people to co-design and co-develop 3 distinct activities. The first is a public digital campaign on suicide prevention for young people, specifically to address stigma and discrimination. The second is to develop a peer counseling service, which will be delivered through a chat-based app on a mobile phone, and we will be training a network of youth volunteers as peer counselors to provide suicide prevention support to young people who are in distress. And the third activity is to train 10 youth advocates in these 3 cities to engage with policymakers and in policy processes on youth suicide prevention. The Outlive webinar series is actually a 4-part monthly webinar, which is being jointly implemented by It's Okay to Talk Sangath and the Center for Mental Health, Law and Policy. This series essentially aims to provide young people, the mental health community, and policymakers with various perspectives and lived experiences on preventing suicide among young people. Over the course of the 4 months, this series will bring into discussion suicide prevention and youth mental health experts on how we can prevent youth suicides by addressing some of the social, cultural, and economic factors that disproportionately impact urban youth in India. So today's discussion will specifically focus on suicide prevention support for LGBTQIA plus youth who are in distress and in crisis. We've got an amazing panel for today's discussion, and I'm extremely honored to be moderating this panel with panelists who I all look up to and I'm really inspired by. Our first panelist is Dr. Ketki Ranade, or KP. KP is faculty and chairperson at the Center for Health and Mental Health TIS, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. KP's areas of teaching and research include queer affirmative, mental health practice, mental health advocacy, policy and legislations, clinical social work, and research methodology. KP has also been leading a week-long certificate course on queer affirmative counseling practice at TIS, Mumbai. KP's recent publication includes a book titled Growing Up Gay in Urban India, a critical psychosocial perspective. And an interesting trivia about this book is that it was quoted by the Honorable Supreme Court in its judgment, in the Navte Johar judgment, which read down Section 377 of the IPC. KP is also currently working on a co-authored resource book on queer affirmative counseling practice in India. Thanks a ton, KP, for being a part of this panel. Our next speaker is Dalit non-binary queer Neeraj Kumar, who is the founder of the Unsound Project. They are a queer affirmative counseling practitioner, psychotherapist, and social worker. Their research and practice areas include gender, sexuality, disability, queer, Dalit Bahujan, mental health, and feminism. Currently, they are an MPhil scholar with the School of Human Studies at Ambedkar University, Delhi, and are also associated with Nazariya Queer Feminist Resource Group as a consultant counselor. Thanks, Atan Neeraj, for being a part of this panel. Really excited to have you on board. And our third speaker for today is Daksh Singh Rajput, who is a writer, poet, and rapper. He has also completed his MA Psychology, Psychosocial Clinical Studies from Ambedkar University, Delhi, and has also previously worked as a counselor with a nonprofit. Daksh, thank you very, very much for agreeing to be a part of this panel. So the way we're going to go about this discussion is we've got about an hour. We have about 2-3 rounds of questions that we will sort of discuss with each of our panelists. I would request each of the panelists to sort of limit their answers to about 5 minutes so that we can cover all the questions, and towards the end also address questions from the audiences if they come up. Just to kind of point out that we will be discussing sensitive issues which could be triggering, specifically around suicide, and which is why we have provided certain numbers of helplines which are present in the description box on the YouTube live that you can see. And just in case at any point in time, if you feel that this is very triggering or very uncomfortable, please feel free to take a break and come back when you're feeling better. Okay, so I'm going to begin with the first question, and Kippy, I will turn to you first. We know that from evidence now, from research studies across the world now, that LGBTQI plus youth are more vulnerable to distress and risk of suicide. I was just curious to know, what does your own research say about this in the Indian context? Are suicide rates higher amongst LGBTQI youth in India? And what are some of the factors which make the youth more vulnerable to the risk of suicide and self-harm?
Okay, hi Arjun, and hi everyone at Sangath and Center for Mental Health Law and Policy. Thanks for having me here. Before I respond to that question, Arjun, I'm actually going to say something first about the question itself. So what I want to say to begin with is that, when we are asking the question about higher suicide rates or whether queer people are more at risk for suicide, I just want to say that it's important when I said that it's important, I'm going to talk something about the question. What I mean is that it's important first to ask the right set of questions when it comes to queer and trans mental health. And why I'm saying that is because we are communities who have been traditionally pathologized and medicalized within the side disciplines and within mental health systems. And so I mean, when I'm saying that, when we ask a question like, who's more at risk for suicide, there's always the fear of individualizing this question again and saying that someone is more at risk for suicide means there is something wrong with this person. Yeah. So we don't want to do that. And therefore, we of course want to move from an individualizing discourse to a more systemic discourse. And which is why when I hear you also saying that who's more vulnerable and whether queer people are more vulnerable to suicide, I just think that the right question in that sense would be that for any marginalized groups, actually, to instead of saying what groups are more at risk for suicide, we actually need to be asking what are the life circumstances that are shared by people who die by suicide. Yeah. So I think that would be a more, a more right sort of question to ask. And the reason I say this is, I take a minute or so to just explain why I'm saying this is that actually for the longest time, and I've been engaging on queer and trans mental health for almost 20 years now. And I feel that, in the 90s, for example, many of us who were researchers and who were mental health practitioners and who were queer ourselves, and who are activists, we were answering this question of, is homosexuality natural? And so we were spending a lot of time trying to say that, there is this more than 200 species where you see homosexuality, and homosexuality is there in nature, is there in birds, and is there in animals, and so it must be natural. So we were often put in a position where we were answering the wrong questions, because the questions were posed by systems which are cis-het systems, right? And so which is why I feel that it's important to ask the right set of questions. So another example is, I remember in the in 2000s, for example, many of us were put in a position where we were responding to the question of conversion treatment. And we were going to lengths to explain why conversion treatments are not effective. And I think that was the wrong question. The right question was to say that what is the harm that conversion treatments cause, which we came to much later, because we were always responding to what the system was asking of us. And they were saying that, yeah, homosexuals can be cured and they can get married and they can produce babies and, carry forward the family name. And trans people are abnormal and they need to be put back into the gender that was assigned to them at birth and so on. And we were stuck with explaining how it was not effective. But it was only much later that we started saying that this question itself is wrong. We need to be asking, what is the harm caused by these treatments to people like us? Yeah. So similarly, I feel that with suicide, the question to ask is that those of us who at young age, and you're working between 18 to 24, at a very young age, those of us who think that life is not livable, what is it that is in our life circumstances that puts us in that position where we start thinking that, that life is not livable? This is not something that I can, I can see this as something that I can survive. And I think that that's an important question. And if we were to approach it like this, then, one way to respond to this in a very short period would be, if I were to take like a life course approach, then I feel that, many queer and trans people from childhood to old age are going to face life situations that are just so much more difficult and sometimes even more extraordinarily difficult, such that life seems unviable. Yeah, it just feels like this is something that you can't live. And one of the things I say in my book on growing up gay is, and applies to growing up queer, trans in any part of the country, is it is about growing up in a largely cisgender heterosexual household, which basically does not have any mirrors to reflect your realities. And so you are basically a young person, you could be a child, who's left to use your internal resources. And, we understand that, and, as children, as young people, we have very little resources in terms of, psychic resources, coping resources, social support, and material resources. So we are just very often very dependent on the adults in our lives. They could be our teachers, they could be our family members. And when we lack mirrors for, somebody who's reflecting back to me that you're good, you're valid, and you don't have to constantly feel out of place, alienated, constantly struggle with this thing of, something must be wrong with me. So a child who's not having to, or who's having to rather face questions of something must be terribly wrong because I don't fit in, this must be unnatural, abnormal, my God must be against this, etc. I just think that that's just a very, very huge burden for a young person to have to answer these questions for themselves. Then, of course, go meet people who are like themselves and find those mirrors that are validating. So I think in that sense, from young age onwards, I think it's just life can be extremely difficult for most queer and trans people. And the good thing I think about the way this is being now talked about in the Indian context, and so I come back to the question that you asked about research, that you do have epidemiological studies and what I often call acontextual research. That these are numbers, and we do have some in India as well that tells us that the proportion of the the LGBT suicides compared to population estimates are much higher, and there are some numbers like that in the Indian context. There is some work done on suicidality, clinical depression among men who have sex with men, and so on in Bombay in India in the last 5 or 6 years. So I think there is that kind of work, but I also think that there is a lot of very interesting systemic sort of research that is happening. So for example, if I just look at education as a system, and I think that there is some very, very interesting work that is sort of looking at, in a more contextualized way, looking at bullying in schools, absence of support, gender normative dress codes and uniforms, and infrastructural and attitudinal barriers that can make participation in schooling, in the whole process of self-development and so on, that can make it very difficult for queer and trans people. And I'm really happy about the fact that there is that kind of work that's happening. And so that's just my sort of beginning response to you in terms of what makes queer and trans people more vulnerable. I think just surviving on a day-to-day basis, sort of surviving shame, surviving humiliation that is meted out to you as a young queer or trans person can be just very, very difficult. And I must also say this, that many of us, including myself, as a teenager, I remember thinking, at least in my teen years, and I've shared this now with many people, and it's a common story that many people will tell you, young people, queer people will tell you that, when they were around 17, 18, 19, many of us thought that this life is not going to, it's not possible to live this life. I'm not going to live and survive very long. And very often people will tell you that, the only goal was to get out of that parental home. That didn't make any sense. And, maybe one day I'll get out and I'll meet people like me, I'll meet someone who love me, and, so on and so forth. And many of us actually got into these pacts with ourselves in our heads, that by the time I'm 20, I'll get out, and then by 25, if nothing works out, I'll just end it all. And I think it's a very common script for a lot of queer people growing up. So that's just some of my beginning ideas on vulnerability of queer and trans folks.
Sure. Thanks a ton, KP. I think you've raised a very, very, very significant point. And I think, the whole issue about asking the right questions and who do we center? Who are we centering or decentering in our questions or through our questions? Specifically in the context of the LGBTQI community, when we know that there has been a very dark history of pathologization of people from the LGBTQI community, so as to say that, they are the ones who have a defect or a disorder or a pathology within them. I think it becomes all the more important to shift that decenter that focus and turn it onto systemic factors which are actually responsible in the first place for people experiencing the kind of distress that they do. And I think this is even more true for suicide, because it's often a myth that suicide is an individual issue, right? That the cause of suicide lies in the person because they had a mental health problem or they had a mental illness. But we again know through research now that over 50% of suicides and attempted suicides are not because of mental illness or mental disorders, but are because of all kinds of socioeconomic issues, risk factors, crises, and other forms of distress. So asking the question and decentering the individual and putting the focus on the structures and the system becomes extremely crucial. This is actually a perfect segue into the next question for you, Neeraj. And this is specifically, like even KP highlighted, that discrimination, which is identity-based and status-based, is now known to be a risk factor for suicide and attempted suicide. Now, it is also a fact that we live in not just a heteronormative society, which is only sort of validating, the existence and the needs of heterosexual people and not of people from the LGBTQI community. But at the same time, we also live in a deeply casteist society, right? Where caste discrimination is a reality for millions of people in this country. You yourself have been doing some pioneering work at the intersections of mental health, gender, sexuality, and caste. Drawing from your own work, can you talk about how does a casteist and a heteronormative society shape the experiences of youth, specifically those coming from LGBTQ communities and who also belong to Dalit Bahujan communities or who have been experiencing caste discrimination in India? Neeraj, I think you're on mute. Okay, I think Neeraj has probably dropped off and we will try and connect him again. We'll try and connect them again. In the meantime, let me let me move on to Daksh. Daksh, अगर मैं आपसे पूछ सकता हूँ कि आपकी खुद की जर्नी रही है और काफी कठिन जर्नी रही है, लेकिन काफी इंस्पायरिंग भी रही है, तो क्या आप थोड़ा अपने एक्सपीरियंस, अपनी जर्नी के बारे में कुछ शेयर करना चाहते हैं, और खासकर कि उन मोमेंट्स में जहाँ पे आपको सपोर्ट की जरूरत थी, तो वो सपोर्ट एक्सेस करने में आपको क्या मुश्किलें हुई, क्या दिक्कतें हुई, और अल्टीमेटली आपको वो सपोर्ट फिर कहाँ से मिला? अगर इस पे आप थोड़ा अपने एक्सपीरियंसेस से रिफ्लेक्ट करना चाहते हैं।
Yeah. First of all, thank you to give me this opportunity to speak something. So yes, uh, at the age of 6-7 years, I knew that there's something wrong with me, but as I was a child, so I didn't recognize what is wrong. And when I entered in sixth class, so I came to know, okay, there is something wrong. Okay, my soul and my body is different. Actually, I always felt that I'm a book, and the story is different and cover is different, and people always judge by the cover. So they used to judge me by the cover, and I felt very bad. And but the thing is that I did not share these things to anyone because I had a fear that people will laugh, people won't understand me. So I didn't share this thing to anyone. I completed my schooling and my graduation, and when I took admission in masters Ambedkar University, so only there I felt something different, that I felt safe there, and I met lots of people who were understanding me. And the first I shared about me, there was my classmate, and I shared about me, and he told me something that there is a code of GID. And before that, I didn't have idea what is GID and all. So he told me, and I felt very safe then, and I did my masters. I was very happy, and even it was the first time then I opened up and I shared my whole life, even my dissertation, my thesis, my master thesis. The title was I by myself, autobiographical, and I have written ऑल थिंग्स, पूरी लाइफ, मेरी पूरी लाइफ मैंने उसके अंदर लिखी, जो भी अब तक की लाइफ थी, और मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा, और आई डिडंट फील एनीथिंग रॉन्ग, और आई फियर नहीं था बिल्कुल भी। और फिर ये हुआ कि इन 2019 I was just using YouTube, and I came across with a video, and there was a guy who was telling about the something surgery and all, and the money, in 2019 June I'm talking about. And I got motivation, I was so happy, and means I was so happy that I came to know that it is possible. Before that, I didn't have idea that it is possible to do these kind of things, because I always thought that I have to spend lakhs or crore rupees, crores. And then immediately I spoke with my friends, some of my professor, that I want to go under sex change surgery. And so they supported me. I was very happy they supported me. Actually, I am very lucky that I have these kind of such a good good friend and professors. The old professors from AUD, actually, Ambedkar University. So I told them, they advised me to take counseling, and some said ki okay, you can do, but take some time, go for the counseling. This is my habit. I listen always everyone, but I do whatever I want to do. I listen, I respect. Obviously, I respect to all of them. I respect it, and but I think I thought कि बहुत time चला गया है, so I don't want to waste my time. And in June, I got idea that it is possible, and in September 2019, 8 of 8 September 2019, I went to the Madhya Pradesh, Indore, and I got my surgery, 3 surgery in a day. In one day, I got 3 surgery. I was alone, and I didn't have idea ki after surgery, uh, where will I go and who will support me. I didn't think. Even I didn't tell to my friends, my professor, my family. They didn't have idea. I just went and did. And after my surgery, I called to my friend and I said that, okay, I have done it. What next? And I am so lucky. They arranged everything. And I came to the international airport of Delhi, and my friends were there. They were there, and I didn't have idea that's where I am going. And one of my professor, I went to her home. My psychology professor, I went to her home for 15 days. I stayed there, and after 15 days, I stayed my one of also professor's home, and they supported me very well, and they just treated me as like their child, and I'm very happy that I did it, and I have support system, my friends and my professors. I'm very lucky, and I'm very happy. That is the reason I am sitting in front of you and talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Daksh. That is extremely inspiring, and very, it generates a lot of hope for a lot of people who might be listening to you today. So thank you so much for sharing that. I will come back to you with a couple of more questions where I'd like to know a little bit more about your ideas about how, what kind of support measures need to be provided for young people who are going through similar journeys. But if I could now come back to you, Neeraj, if your internet is working. Um, I'll very quickly repeat my question. I just wanted to know that given the fact that we live in a casteist and a heteronormative society, from your experience, could you talk a little bit about how casteism and of course living within a heterosexual world shapes the experiences of young people from the LGBTQ community, specifically who are also experiencing caste-based discrimination in India?
Sure. Thank you, Arjun. Can you hear me? If you can just give me a heads up.
Sure, go ahead.
Cool, cool. Okay, first, apologies that I lost my internet. So second, also thank you, Daksh, for sharing your story. I think it's always inspiring to listen to more people. And I think I also want to take an opportunity to tell that I was also one of those lucky ones because I'm sharing a platform with my very coolest and the most amazing professor KP, because I went to TIS actually because I saw there is somebody called Ketki Ranade who does this research, and I'm like, okay, I'm sure this person would be uh comfortable and more supportive. So also thanks to KP, for bridging that entire gap of psychology, because I think what I'm going to speak now is also based upon how what KP's work has been about, and I'm trying to take it further through a caste lens, and how it basically uh, talks to the Dalit or Bahujan community. So I'm specifically going to speak from a perspective for Dalit, and I'm trying to argue that it might help in bringing other perspectives as well. So I have written down 6 to 7 points that to very quickly go on that how it impacts, how it affects. it may or may not lead to suicidal ideation also. So one needs to be very clear, because with these two identities, I've also seen it, there is high resistance also coming. So there will be huge distress. But what I've also understood till now, with lot of communication, with lot of conversation with Dalit queer folks, that they are highly resistant. We are fucking beautiful. So I'm just so sorry if that's not the word we are supposed to use it. But also I want to start with that part, that also there is high resilience. We are beautiful beings. uh, Even we are living in a horrible times, there's still lot of resistance that's seeing. So one, to talk about Arjun, that when we talk about caste heteronormativity, the what it is basically, and how does one be queer, right? So to be a queer or to be a trans, what is basically it means to be desirable, it means sex, it means sexuality, it means how many partners you would have, with whom you would have sex, who would you go out on a date, what kind of a date you will go, will it be in a restaurant, will it be in a movie theater, will it be in a tailor, can I afford to go in a fancy place or not, or am I very confident to say that let's say I live in this specific colony in Delhi, which is a Dalit colony, can I go and outspokenly talk about this thing in my date, when we have seen it with a lot of queer folks, because it has remained a very dominant discourse that places are not queer friendly, and there has been a very uh, a solid advocacy to make people make places queer friendly, which is great. But also the same queer friendly places remains inaccessible to Dalit folks, or somebody who comes from a low class, because their idea of desirability, their idea of relationship, their idea of what the love means is not into the fancy places or something. And I think the class may come in different various variations. But also second is also going to be a Dalit and the gaze of a Savarna, that how this person is looking up to you, and how much can you give it back, and what is the uh, where are you even in your own Dalithood journey. Because uh, and I don't know, I was just feeling that it's also very political, it's more very celebration, that today we are talking about LGBTQI in on the Ambedkar Jayanti, because I think that's personally for me it's going to be really political to just say it, that how it needs to meet together. One is that uh, family may not specifically be violent space for Dalit Bahujan folks. They would be, because as any other queer person it would. But these are also places for love and politics. They are the places where we learn about caste. So they may not be the same as any Savarna person who would just say that uh, I don't understand discrimination, I don't understand stigma. But as Dalit folks, we come from this part, we learn caste through our families or through filling the forms and going back and talking to it. So I think this complexity makes it very difficult for a somebody who is Dalit or Bahujan queer to figure it out, that now what to do. Because later when you come out, later when you are there in the reality of yourself as a queer trans person, then of course families do, they have their own issues and everything. We have seen the same form of violence also within the Dalit households and Bahujan households. So it may not vary, but of course so again the another one would be just that any marginalization would not mean that the person can be sensitive or insensitive. So that's one. um Another thing is also I want to bring is the question of faith. Right, with a lot of the Dalits and Bahujan, the question of faith is also really important. And I think in mental health we speak a lot on spirituality, faith, and what is basically your ultimate aim towards life and everything. And I think with Dalit specifically, within the psychology, they are extremely casteist theories, that they go on karma theory, that you did something great, that's why you're born Brahmin. You did something really shitty in the previous janam, that's why you're Dalit or you're Bahujan. Now it's a very very tricky psychic uh, violence that one does it. And and people internalize the same way we have internalized homophobia, we have transphobia, and it's like it's the same way that people also fight and vary and etc. And that may lead to institutional murders, where people would feel that we just can't, because the state is too much. uh, And also the most interesting is that as Dalit folks, we have SCST atrocity acts. It's not that we are fighting for something uh, which we may not have at the moment. And we have seen the most blunt thing, because those things are not implemented. The language of atrocities are getting, debated and dialogue, that ye to discrimination hua, this is discrimination, this is not atrocities. So I think the same sexist, misogynist, phallus oriented conversation which the court does all the time comes in the different forms to the Dalit queer population or Dalit trans folks as well. And the another point also I want to make is that with the trans folks, with sex workers, uh, persons those who are in dance work and etc., it has a very very violent histories for Dalit community. And I think for sex workers and the dance worker, it has remained the most controversial and the most still debatable argument, that how, what is the way out of it, how can we look at. And even I think, even I personally also say that, how are we going to look at pleasure, how are we going to look at queer within the Dalit bodies, which all the time is in the gaze of the Savarna. And the desirability is fair, you need to be this satisfy some specific rules. If you're wearing a jewelry, what kind of a jewelry you can wear. I also like give a lot of examples within the trans community, when I see a lot of trans women, that look at her aesthetics are so expensive. I'm like, can I afford that aesthetic to come on the Vogue front? Can I do that? Can I not do it? And if my politics is not to support any designer or anything, then will I be desirable as a jhola chap sari person? uh, uh, I won't. Of course, on the grinder or on the dating website, you'll be like, yeah, just and I think it has been there that many of the Dalit queers bodies have experienced untouchability on the online websites, including in their personal lives. So that's there. Uh, the last point which I want to bring is of course that there is erasure of a caste within the queer movement, because we have also seen it last years what happened in the Bombay Pride, uh, within the question of a dissent, right? So it remains the question of Brahminical supremacy and a phallus to be upfront, that it needs to be a one homo national agenda, and which is to basically go to Supreme Court and say that we need gay marriage, and we need gay marriage within the Hindu Marriage Act, which is the most hostile towards, I think, anybody, I would just say. And then you basically going and saying, I think every single thing which happens in either a queer or a Dalit community, we need to understand they both have impact on Dalit queers. One, uh, later people who go to therapy, people those who are neurodivergent, including me and a lot of my friends, I think we are still struggling with the language, that what is happening to us. We don't have answers. And uh, we don't even know if we going to kill ourselves or not, because we don't even have a very clear idea about it, that how the death is going to look like, what is the uh, so I think these are the question I wanted answers, some of the things that I wanted to just put it out there, that is happening. And if you have, like, I'll just give you like one very tiny example, that many during my ethnography I've seen it, that many persons also converted to Christian, the Dalit Christian that we talk about. So there was this one lesbian, Dalit lesbian, who talked to me that how she used to always struggle when she used to masturbate, because she is like, I'm doing a sin. Now we have to understand this on a multiple psyche, right? As a Dalit, you're anyway, you're first of all, you're not allowed for a faith access, right? Second, when you did it with the historical push and etc., then if you're queer, then the masturbation is not for a girl, right? Masturbation is also for somebody else. In the sex set, and when this person spoke to me, I think I got goosebumps to figure it out, that how phallus centric we remain all the time. Why do we remain phallus centered all the time? uh, Dalit lesbians have the most unique concerns at the moment, which I have understood. Or Dalit queer women assigned at birth, or intersex at the assigned at the birth, I've seen it. uh, the Dalit queer or the Bahujan queer understanding in itself is evolving at the moment. but it still remains very phallus oriented also to just sort of bring that part and etc. uh, so yeah, I'll just stop here. Yeah.
Wow, thanks, Neeraj. I mean, there's so much that you have shared. There is so much to unpack. I think every point that you made, deserves a webinar of its own, just to unpack the complexity of these realities and these lived experiences, which are in so many ways dehumanized because of the systems and the social structures that we live in. I mean, a couple of points, of course, stood out, and I will sort of come back to it specifically around the issue of resilience and resistance, because I think that's an important, very important point. Because often the gaze, as you talk about it, is one of a dehumanizing gaze, right? Like KP pointed out in the beginning also, that it's again you're pathologizing the individual, right? And so then how important is it then to talk about narratives of resilience, and how people are resisting some of these forces on a daily minute-to-minute basis. Just to kind of take that forward, KP, just to kind of talk about the whole idea of support. And I think the fundamental question is also this disconnect between between the lived experiences of youth from the LGBTQ community on the one hand, and a heteronormative world, like I said before, which is designed only to validate the experiences and the existence of heterosexual people, right? And that extends to the whole issue of mental health, the kind of mental health support that's provided to people from the LGBTQ community, and the inherent biases that members of the community experience when they go out for support and counseling. You yourself have been the pioneer, one of the co-pioneers of the queer affirmative counseling practice, which is now building. Very happy to see that it's building an entire cadre of LGBTQI affirmative counselors, therapists, social workers, educators. Can you tell us a little bit about what QACP really means, and why is this needed, particularly in the context of suicide prevention for LGBTQIA youth?
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you actually a little bit before I tell you specifically about the current QACP course. But, I'm studying and you started out by saying this disconnect between lived realities of queer folks, trans people, and what goes on in the education and curriculum that sort of that is what builds a mental health professional. That's what they bring into the clinic and into the practice. I just want to sort of start out by telling you that so I was training in between the year 2001 and 3 at this sort of premier, one of the largest mental hospital and training institution in India. And I remember at that time being posted in the behavioral medicine unit, which is the behavioral therapy unit. And I remember seeing conversion treatment being practiced with a 19-year-old gay man who was brought there by his family. And apart from the aversion all that technology that is there to give you these mild shocks on your wrist when you see new pictures of men, and you don't get that shock when you see new pictures of women. So apart from the aversion therapy, the counseling that would go along with this treatment would be to talk about, to tell this person that homosexuality is sinful. You should remember, every time you feel attracted to a man, remind yourself that homosexuality brings disease, it brings shame to the family, and it's illegal in this country. This is 2003, right? So it was illegal in the country in that sense, and it causes disease. Of course, HIV was all over at that point of time. So I just want to say that so QACP is what it is today. In many ways, for some of us who were, and strangely enough, there were two of us who were sort of not very out, but two of us who were out to each other, queer people in this behavioral medicine unit. And Of course, one of the things we did was we managed to sneak in to this guy who was coming in for treatment there. We managed to give him a visiting card of Swabhava, which is a local NGO that has been running this group called Good As You for more than 20 years now in Bangalore city. So fortunately, there were those kinds of spaces there even then. And I just want to again go into that history just to say that, so queer affirmative work is happening and has been happening in India for a very, very long time. And it has been on the fringe. So some of us, so I finished my degree in 2003, and I think soon after that, one of the things I did was to do a study on trying to document good practices. So people who are trained in these kinds of ridiculous places where you're being, this was my training. I was being trained in this place where people were told that you are diseaseful and harmful and sinful and all of that kind of stuff. So we were all being trained in these places, and I had senior people in the field who were still doing different things. And they were doing this on their own. It was not like they went abroad and studied something else and came back and then they were practicing in India. But particularly, I think HIV counselors, peer counselors around this point, as well as a whole bunch of cisgender heterosexual women who were married and had children, but who were doing this amazing work with gay men, MSM in cities. And so one of the first things we did was I was involved with a project where we were trying to document these good practices. And that's how I think I wrote a manual on gay affirmative counseling practice in 2013, and around there about there is some stuff that we were writing, I was writing at that point of time. To say that, I mean, this is just to give you a context that even then, this was stuff that was not coming from the system, but people were doing different kind of practice. And even now, with queer affirmative counseling practice, which now has Mariwala Health Initiative, which is funding this project and things like that. And so we've been able to really reach more than, I think I was doing actively training on as a trainer in QACP till beginning 2020. After that, I'm not doing those trainings anymore. But I'm told that more than 150 people have been trained in queer affirmative counseling. And even now, I want to say this is still fringe. So this is still not your system. So even today, it's important to note that, the irony is that the Medical Council of India revised its curriculum after 21 years. And the revised curriculum was published in September 2018, 2 weeks after the decriminalization of homosexuality, 2 weeks after reading down of 377. And the revised curriculum after 21 years continues to have problematic ideas around lesbians and gay men and so on in forensic psychiatry, in psychiatry, forensics and all of these things. So that's still your mainstream curriculum. Yeah, that's for doctors, but mainstream curriculum within the side disciplines is still doing all kinds of stuff, right? So I just want to say that QACP in that sense, though in many ways is popular and it's also super cool, right, nowadays to be doing queer affirmative work and to be also teaching queer affirmative work. I just want to give this history to say that many of us have been also doing this at a time when this was not sexy at all. And this was something that didn't give you any money or any, you didn't get called into webinars to talk about QACP. But just to say that this has been the history, and even now, even though it is super cool in cities like Bombay and Delhi, we still know that we recently heard about this trans man from Delhi who a psychiatrist insisted that he wanted to do a genital examination in order to give a gender dysphoria certificate. And that's still your mainstream practice. And we know that after the death by suicide of Anjana Harish from Kerala, which happened last year, after that, there is now a case pending in the Kerala High Court asking for ban of conversion treatments. So, all of this is happening parallelly. So I think it's important to see, so before I tell you what QACP is, and I really don't have much to say, except that there's now a lot of literature. We are ourselves writing a resource book for training mental health practitioners on queer affirmative practice. But I just want to give this background and say that we are still living in a country where a high court at a state is still deciding on whether conversion treatments need to be banned. Even if they will be banned, we know that there will be doctors, and as there will be parents who will say ki isko badal ke do. My only son, he needs to be able to get married, produce children. My only son who's saying that I am a woman. What is this going on? So this is going to keep going on. And so in that sense, queer affirmative work that we must do, we must do it, of course, at systemic level. We must influence education. We must influence curriculum and training. What we are trying to do in QACP is actually twofold. One is, and which is why I think it is fringe, because one thing we're trying to do is, of course, bring in literature and talk about lived experience, talk about centering lives of people to some extent, not so much. We've not included so much of trans mental health. I'd like to do much more. So to some extent, we are doing some of that. We are talking about existing counseling models. How will we have to change our practice in order to make it more responsive to queer lives and trans lives? But more than that, I feel that QACP is a perspective. And I think that's why it will stay fringe for some time, simply because the mainstream mental health curriculum is a perspective. It is supposed to be neutral, and therefore it's supposed to be dominant. Yeah, so it's not going to want to engage with I mean, it's going to be really difficult for something like queer affirmative. It's not just practice; it's queer affirmative perspectives, which are basically getting you to think about what is the dominant when it comes to gender and sexuality, and what happens to the ones that fall through the cracks that are non-normative around gender sexuality, and then every other parameter that Neeraj was talking about caste and other kinds of locations as well. So QACP in many ways is this perspective which I think it's a perspective that influences practice, and I think it might be easier for QACP practice and some ideas that we are doing in practice, they might get incorporated. This perspective will be difficult to push through.
Right. Thanks, KP. I think it's interesting that you say that QACP is still fringe, and that is a reality. And I think one of the things for us to also look at how do we address the whole issue of support is to also look at it in terms of law and policy, and that's something that we will come back to specifically in terms of the kind of systemic changes that are required, because there are only so many QACP courses that can be run, right? And as you said, these are fringe groups, so what about the mainstream? How are we redefining the mainstream, and what do we need to do for that? But Neeraj, if I could quickly come to you, just kind of taking forward what KP spoke about, if you could just very quickly share some of the affirmative approaches that you've been using in your own practice with your clients, and also, as importantly, what are some of the sources of strength and resilience that young people draw upon, especially in moments of when they're distressed or in crisis? So what are these sources of strength that young people draw upon, in these particular situations? If you could share some bit from your own experience.
Okay, cool. I think I'll start with the last thing what you just said, it that what are the what's the hope, and how are they drawing hope. And I think the one thing is also which pandemic did is, of course, lot of, I think, of course, in the pandemic we learned a lot of things that how people are managing. But also one thing is the fact that there was a lot of conversation around queer and trans uh, children, adults, that they have to go back to their families also, and stay that. And of course there was multiple form of violence. But also one thing I think which also I saw in my own practice is this: there were many people who were also very clear that what are the strategies works for them to survive in the family. So they were also not those, the way we look at it, right, the gaze that oh, I need to go and I need to intervene, that go to the bathroom, go do this and everything. They had very much existing already strategies that they were using anyway to address their parents or neighbors. And how, because see what KP said, it's from the childhood, right? That the person start negotiating that how I have to live in this world which is going to constantly bully me, and constantly going to violate and etc. So one thing is also to acknowledge that they uh, persons, or we have existing strategies, we know how to basically tackle the world, of course. So one is that to also address. And the second is of course, what I've learned, what I'm going to speak now is all what I've learned in my social work or QACP journey, and not in psychology. And I'm making it very clear that one needs to take it as a political statement, that this is not something I've studied in psychology, what I'm going to speak now. Because uh, psychology did teach me to make it a person into symptoms, and make it a person, person's problem to themselves. It was later when the systematic uh, understanding came to me later when I went into the my further life. So one is, of course, lived experience is the first thing that we need to really be focused about it, that and this lived experience needs to be anybody who are working in a minority or marginalized community. It could be women, it could be persons with disabilities, or somebody who's coming from DBA community. I think with the DBA plus Queer community, that's the major thing we need to understand is the first is also reading Ambedkar is really important. You just can't choose to not understand annihilation of caste and be anti-caste, because anti-caste has a lot of limitation in itself. There can be some of the cases where persons will they again, one thing I always talk about caste is that it's caste is also not only about this existing life, it's also about the past and the future life, that it struggles a lot with this part of it, that there are certainly myths about it, that you did something horrible in the same myths, right, which we had it with the homosexuality. You did something wrong, and you're gay because it's you did some sin and etc. So I think the same psyche violates and keeps on violating. So I think one, as a therapist, I have realized that also, that one needs to go back, read Annihilation of Caste, which I did it with other reasons also. But for people those who are here, uh, you need to be very aware of the politics of the Dalit DBA community. What is happening? You can't just work in a Vedanta hospital and say that you're very pro Adivasis or anything. Then that is something that we all will come after you. That how are you being a counselor or healing. So I think with the healing practices, when you work with the ABA community and etc., these are the major things that you need to be aware of it. So one, um second, I think the constant thing you need to do it as keep deconstructing the idea of a gender or social institution, that how the person is also understanding. uh, and of course one needs to work constantly how you have understood, and how you can sort of facilitate them to deconstruct it, because I have also realized that amongst many marginalization, they also internalize really really strong opinions and thoughts. Examples would be like chosen family, the concept of a chosen family. And with one of my clients, we saw it that she struggled because they were all upper caste, and she literally felt that she was getting isolated, and she just realized that is chosen family a concept for me or not also. So I think and she again, by the virtue of identities, we become sensitive, we become more observant and etc. So there was this constant denial, isolation also. So I think how one would walk, and what is going to be. And I think that also gave me a hope for family therapies, right? What we say, that how we can imagine and relook at family therapies, couple therapies, when it's going to be an intercaste queer couple, it's going to be a chosen family who would have multiple identities together. uh, where the family therapy would allow us to look at it, and we should push for that. So one is that. The third, which is the final comment I have to say, is also to keep reading and to keep understanding medical discourse from queer feminist and a feminist and a caste perspective, that what is it doing it to you. So with many DBA community, I've seen it, their psychosomatic issues. I think, Arjun, you were also there, right, when Mayur was speaking about his psychosomatic concerns, that how it basically he used to have the habit of eating nails, and it start used to bleeding and everything. So also to sell mental health as a concept to many marginalized community, that no, it may be a genuine concern, and it may need intervention. And that intervention can have many disagreements, that whether it needs to be medical, whether it needs to be mental health, or in Dalit community, if I'm not wrong, there is something in South, we there is this sort of a cultural activity that they do it together, and it's a dance form, and the community feel it, that it's very healing for them, and it's specifically done for mental health, and to heal them from atrocities. So I think one needs to also get into this sort of activities also, that what are the current community led interventions that communities are doing. So I think this is what I've been thinking and what I've been practicing, and I've seen that it has some sort of forms of result and etc. And also what is the last thing would be that I think as psychologists, of course, we are very clear, therapists, counselors, social workers, we're clear with the boundaries. But I think in case of DBA or queer folks, we need to go a little extra mile. We need to also be there. We might just need to go to their homes also sometime to rescue them, that, or, and we need to be very critical when to engage with police, because I think many people do think that, if it's somebody who is in extremely distress and this person is alone, mostly, like, to be very honest, queer or anybody marginalized, they end up usually being very alone. And when, as a therapist, if you're worried that this person will do any harm to themselves, one needs to be very critical when one wants to intervene with the police, because it makes the life of a person more troublesome. And I've actually seen it with during my practice, that how there was some intervention, and later, because parents did something, and later again we had to support the person differently to basically heal from it. So I think these are the things from my end, Arjun.
Right. Thanks, Neeraj. Again, that's really, really illuminating and helpful. And I think again you've touched upon multiple points. I do completely agree with you that the kind of response strategy and who are the people in the individual ecosystem that you are reaching out to, when to reach out to them, when not to reach out to them, is a very important question, specifically in the context of individuals where families have been a site of violence, right? Or the state can end up being a site of violence, right? So I think that's a really important dimension for us to be thinking about when we're talking about affirmative support, because the line between affirmative support and something which can end up being more harmful is very thin, very, very thin. And the second point that I think is I can't stress enough of it, especially for some of us who come from oppressor communities or the ruling classes, is to read, to understand the experience of the other, to unlearn, to engage with different perspectives. And I think that is probably the first thing that anybody needs to do before they get into any kind of affirmative work. Daksh, मैं आपके पास आना चाहता हूँ इस वक्त. आपने अपनी जर्नी शेयर की. मैं ये जानना चाहता था कि आज भी और आपकी जर्नी में भी सबसे ज्यादा स्ट्रेंथ और होप आपको कहाँ से मिलता है? और दूसरा जो क्वेश्चन है वो ये है कि जो नौजवान हैं, जो यूथ हैं, जो इस किस्म की डिफिकल्टी से गुजर रहे हैं, उनके लिए किस प्रकार के सपोर्ट मेजर्स दिए जाने चाहिए आपके हिसाब से, और आप उनको क्या कहना चाहते हैं कि वो अपनी सहन शक्ति कैसे बढ़ाएं, अपनी रेजिलियंस को कैसे बढ़ा सकते हैं, and how can they where can they draw strength and hope from, especially in times when they're feeling the lowest?
Yeah. So I think first I just want to say that the whole game is about of acceptance. स्वीकार करने का पूरा जो खेल है वो इसी का है. Means I just want to share one thing that abhi recently in February or March I was in training, skill development training. There is one organization, Periphery, who works for community. So they provide training to skill development, and there are many activities. So after that they provide job to all community people. So they are doing very good job, good work. So there I noticed, because before that I didn't have any community friend and all, trans man, trans woman, nothing, no one. So when I went to the training, I met many people from community. They all from the community. So I felt very good, and they all were very comfortable while talking to each other, and they all were very happy. So I felt one thing that, and the one thing is, I just want to mention, trainers, mind blowing trainers actually. All trainer treated very well. Uh, right now, for sometimes I can say that the trainers were society there, and we all were community. So they were treating us very well. So I think the all matter is for to accept karne ka, to accept. So I just want to say one thing, that community can't be a word, and society can't be a community. So what we can do now, we can merge them now. We can merge them. We can help. Means I just for me, I just want to say that society should accept community, uh, because I have seen that only some community, we always talk about, there is a one community, there is a one organization, there is another organization, and they accept community people, they are doing something for community people. Why can't we, society can't do, why society can't do these kind of things? And one more thing is that there are many organizations who are working for community, but the thing is that they don't even know who are the organization and where are the organization, why they merge their self, and why they come together to help them. Because when I was searching for organization to get fund for my surgery, so I found one organization, a second organization. They are still there, but they are not helping. I don't think so they are helping. And even if they want to work for community, so they should have idea that there are lots of community, they want to do same work. So why they reach out to each other? I think it would be great if they work like that. You know that I have to apply for my surgery fund in foreign country, and I rejected because I am an Indian. I cannot apply India. I cannot apply in India because they all are confused. They want to do work for us, but where is that work? I can't see. I just want to see the work. Where is that work? I am very disappointed when I think about all these things. And one more thing is that I want to say, uh, those people who commit suicide, who have feared to show their identity, to open up, I just want to say, don't finish your life, because uh, nature give a very beautiful thing, very beautiful power to the woman. Only the woman can birth a child, a new life, new happiness. But I think we can be a creator of ourselves. As I am the creator of myself, I gave birth to me, and I love Daksh Singh Rajput. For me, Daksh Singh Rajput is my child, and I am the father, mother, and family for him. And I will make sure that he will get whatever he wants. I will make sure that. So why don't you do these things? Life is, we don't have idea ki, means, before this I used to dream about that ki, okay God, please help me, and next time I want to, uh, I want to live boy life. But amazing thing is that now I'm living that life and I'm very happy. So why are you waiting for that next janam or next life? Why? Arey, you can do this in this life also. As you can see me, that I am a creator of myself. Why don't you be? If you want to kill something, so you have to kill your negative thoughts, your negative vibes. You have right to kill those, but you don't have right to kill yourself. You should not do that. Actually, even I also thought that, okay, I let's go and commit suicide. But the thing is that I have fear to pain, so I didn't do that, but I tried, I attempted. So I just want to say that there are many good NGOs, many, you know, there are many people, your friends. Just try to speak. Indirectly way you can talk. If you feel that, okay, they are okay with it, so you can open up. If you don't want to share your name, you can talk about ki there is one of my friend and he or she wants to do these things. So you will get idea that, okay, what is his thinking of that person. So it would be easy to judge, and it would be easy for you to be open, or you want to open or you don't want to open with that person. Yeah.
Daksh, I am overwhelmed after listening to you. I think that is extremely powerful. That message that you are the creator of your own life and that you have given birth to your own self. I don't think there's anything more powerful than that. And thank you again for sharing that and saying this for everybody over here. KP, if I can, I'm trying to sort of close the round of questions because I'd also like to get the audience to have a chance to ask questions. But my last question to you, KP, and then I'll come to Neeraj, is I think what I heard Daksh also say was, one was, of course, the issue of acceptance and recognition. And the second is the fact that to provide support of any kind, or to provide affirmative support, it is important that multiple stakeholders within society and community are, in a sense, connected with each other. There is an ecosystem of support and care that is being provided to an individual. That it's not one organization which is doing something, because problems are multiple, right? There are financial, there are psychological, there's discrimination, there's violence, there are multiple problems that an individual is experiencing, and hence response and support also needs to be holistic and comprehensive. My question to you is, as a sort of parting message, what do you think we need to be doing as a community, as a society, both at a community level, at an organization level, and at the level of the state, in creating affirmative support structures, right? And what is the role of law, policy, and policymakers over here, where acceptance and recognition is just not interpersonal, but it's also in the law. It's also coming from the state, directly. So would you have any thoughts on this?
So I think vis-a-vis the community, जो दक्ष कह रहे थे अभी कि बहुत सारी संस्थाएं हैं, शायद एक दूसरे से बात नहीं कर सकते हैं, बहुत सारे एक्टिविस्ट हैं जो एक दूसरे से बात नहीं कर पाते हैं शायद, तो उसमें लिमिट हो जाता है कि हम कितना तक, कहाँ तक पहुँच सकते हैं. तो मुझे लगता है कम्युनिटी लेवल पे रियली मतलब I don't know, one I mean it's a very, might sound simplistic, and yet it's, I think, almost impossible to achieve, is yeah, I mean, how do we learn to be kind to each other? How do we listen to each other? I think we are in a space where, I mean, being most critical and most radical is so important, and being kind is just some crap that, I mean, I think we've just like, we are, I think, in a politically, it's very worrying where we are. We are, in an external sense, we are in a destructive world. And I think we are also internalizing that within our communities. We are destroying more than we are creating and building. That's very worrying. And when you hear a young person like Daksh who's talking about doing all this on his own, of course, having some wonderful friends and professors around who have supported his journey. But when I listen to that, I just think that it's something for us to think about, that how much do we, in this cancel culture, in this competitive culture, in this very critical, radical political space that we all want to be in, what is the space for empathy? What is the space for kindness? What is the space for holding vulnerability? I don't know. These are really very difficult things, and it's yeah, when you listen to young people in a "it's okay to talk" kind of thing, I think we must sit up and think about all of this. So that's, I mean, I think at one level, at the level of community, I think law policy, there is a lot, and I mean nowadays I think it's age, but nowadays I sort of also feel that we should also in some ways focus on implementing what we have. I mean, of course, we have to wage those long battles and all of that about getting, anti-discrimination legislations and those kinds of things that we've been talking about for a long time. But even implementing, we've been talking about the Mental Health Care Act, and there are so many views on it. And as many people think that it's a very progressive act, as many people also find it problematic and so on. And I think that just in the last couple of months, some of the jurisprudence that one is looking at, people are saying MHCA ko implement karo. People are saying, I have grievances, I have a problem with the mental health care system. There is a law in this country. It's been here for 4 years now. There are no review boards. The state mental health authorities are not working. I want to be able to go complain. I want to be able to, their redressal mechanisms are there in spirit. It's there in letter, it's there in the law. It's not being implemented. So I mean, I feel that we increasingly are seeing some of those things. And so to begin with, I think implement what we have a better conversation between laws. I mean, that which is a problem, right? That whenever we are talking about any marginalized group, we go out and make one more law. Now we have the Trans Act, for example. But conversations between laws, which has been said about the Mental Health Care Act and the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act. Similarly, now with the trans law, we don't have as much conversation with, say, legislations that are meant for women. So you have the domestic violence law, you have the sexual harassment at workplace law. They should apply to all women, which means they should apply to trans women, they should apply to trans people. But the Trans Act doesn't, so that's sort of a more horizontal, whether it is planning or legal work, legal frame also. We seem to be doing it in silos, which is, I think, a problem. I mean, I think same thing with right now I'm in the education space, and there is so much conversation happening on the new education policy, the national education policy, which talks about first 1 to 8 or 10 as formative years, and it's considered to be, so the policy is giving a lot of emphasis to childhood. And childhood is again thought about one kind of child. So you do have the trans law that have been brought in by the same government that is bringing in the new education policy, but trans lives are not getting reflected in the new education policy. It's as if the two have nothing to do with each other. It's as if, and again, we have literature in education spaces that is telling us trans people are getting pushed out of education systems that don't work for them. But the new education policy will have nothing to say about them, but we will have a trans law. So, there's a lot of, getting to implement what is there and bringing more consonance, having more, reading these laws and policies with respect to each other to change lives, I think would be important. Stop with that.
Thanks, KP. Neeraj, very quickly coming to you. Today is the 130th birth anniversary of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. Just in terms of what kind of collective action or movements do we need to be working towards to support LGBTQI youth who are experiencing multiple forms of discrimination, whether that's based on caste, ethnicity, disability, so on and so forth. So what do you think in terms of the kind of collective action that we need to be working on to transform existing structures which are more equitable and affirmative?
Okay, thank you, Arjun. I think the first is that we have to move towards annihilation of a caste, because that's the ultimate idea that we all, I think, because that's the ultimate thing, if we can move beyond Brahminical patriarchy, many of our issues can get resolved. So anything with the desirability, women's agency, trans folks and etc. So I think we need to move towards annihilation of a caste without a doubt. And so one is that uh, again, I think I'm going to speak from an intersection specific perspective, is also with the caste perspective, that like SC ST's atrocity acts implementation is a queer freedom uh, implementation of SC/ST reservations, and the fellowship and the money coming to the people, and also people able to get education is a queer freedom, and this kind of emancipation things that we need. And these are the things that we need to constantly join fights, and as collective we need to keep advocating for this concerns. We need to move towards that. The parliament needs to have a woman reservation. We need to not forget that. We need to always remind ourselves that these are all queer issues, that we have to keep moving towards this part of it, that we need to keep coming for that. If the queer community is not living in a vacuum, the way Daksh has also spoken about the division between society and the collective, those who work for the queer community, that it's no different. It's the collective action also needs to be in the front of jobs, but not only in the part of it that कि हमने इतने trans लोगों को इतने queer लोगों को job रख दी. But if you feel that you have a privilege, if we can support everyday struggle, if we can help people with translations, language, skills, these are the also support that one needs to constantly give, that what is the livable concerns that one would feel. um, I think one is that, and I think something which is already doing, MHI is doing it, and I think now there is a wave of peer education model, right? Uh, so I think which is already happening, and which I feel very good about, that now we have so many peer counselors, we have so many peer educators, those who have information, and they can reach out to. So I think collectivization of that, and but also from a very very it needs to be from a very Dalit, queer, feminist, and a trans feminist perspective. We need to hold on to it, what KP just said it. We need radical ideas at the moment, because it's a very difficult dark time. And if we are thinking that without annihilation of caste, there cannot be a queer freedom. So this is something that I want to just end on. Yeah, thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Neeraj. There is one question which has come from one of the audience members, and this is directed to all the panelists. And the question is, one can feel extremely dejected and rejected with conformity of images. So glad that Daksh found the strength to keep suicide away. However, not all of us have that strength, agency, and support to keep us away from decisions that harm us. Does that mean that we have no right to respond to our situation, suicide being one of them? This is open to all three of you, and if anybody would like to answer this. I can repeat the question in Hindi. जो question है वो ये है कि मैं बहुत खुश हूँ कि दक्ष के पास वो सहन शक्ति थी कि वो suicide से दूर रहे, लेकिन हम सब के पास उस किस्म की सहन शक्ति या एजेंसी या सपोर्ट नहीं होता है जो हमें उन डिसीजन से दूर रखे जो हमें हार्म कर सकते हैं. तो इसका क्या मतलब है? क्या हम ऐसी सिचुएशन को रिस्पॉन्ड नहीं कर सकते हैं, और क्या सुसाइड एक रिस्पॉन्स नहीं हो सकता है, खास करके उन लोगों के लिए जो जिनके पास इतना स्ट्रेंथ नहीं है अपने डिसीजन अपने सिचुएशन को डील करने में. Would all of you like to take a stab at the answer?
I think I'll start, and also just to sharing that I think AP and I have been directing each other. You go. So also just making it more public, so it's easy. I think I just want to quickly respond to this thing that uh, I think all of us understand that the times gets difficult, and there are moments when you feel very dark, and there is this thing that we don't understand that what we can do about it, and one would only see as a there can be very less things that we see, and suicide being one of the options that we feel. uh, just believe the fact that these are one of those dark times that will also pass. Believe in yourself. This is the most darkest thing that is going on at the moment, but there'll also be a hope. There is hope. There are people like Daksh, there are people like AP, uh, who have also seen the same dark also, you know. So there is hope always, and just believe the fact, and you know, just let it go, just let go the time, and you know, uh, you don't have to engage with all the moments, you know, all the time. So just let it go and let it pass, and you know why, but they just believe that, you know, it's also system that is letting you to, leading you to feel also this way. And remember that your smile is precious and your smile is political. People are scared when you smile. So always remember this fact that, you know, the system state wants you to feel this way, that, you know, suicide is the only way. But we need to always remember ourselves that, you know, we are more beautiful than this, and you know, even we don't have strength today, we may find it. So this is from my end. Yeah.
Thanks,
Uh,
Neeraj. Ji Daksh.
yeah. So I just want to say that you have right to do whatever you want. But the thing is that if people can't share their life or their things which they are going through, so I just want to say that because they are not finding the way, they are not finding the way, and we, the society, or I can't say anything. The society is responsible for this or not, because we have to be aware. Because there are I am living in Delhi, so I can say about Delhi, but there are very small town villages which even I don't know the name. So we need to be aware. We have to reach out. Means in Delhi, mein, there are many organizations who are helping them to getting support and all. But the thing is that I am saying that we have to increase our chain in village, in society, so that they will feel safe. They have someone to discuss, so that they can remove their negative thoughts. If they are thinking that, okay, I have right to finish my life, I can do that. They have right. Okay, this is their life. But why they are getting that thoughts? Because they are not finding the way. That is the reason the the negative thoughts are coming, because they are not finding someone to talk. There is the only matter of talk, and that is the reason our webinar name is also Let's Talk. Matter of only for talk, talk, talk. You need to talk. Only talking is the solution of your all negative thoughts or all things, I think.
Thank you, Daksh. Are there any other questions from the audience?
Just a quick thing for the same question that
Sure.
Neeraj said was, and what Daksh is saying also, this idea that जिस वजह से मैं इस मकाम पर हूँ जिसमें मुझे लग रहा है कि सुसाइड इज द ओनली ऑप्शन, है ना, तो उसके लिए जो लोग का जो मतलब जिस वजह से या जिस सिचुएशन की वजह से आई एम इन दिस पोजीशन, उसके तरफ देख के स्माइल करना इज व्हाट नीरज वाज सेइंग कि बहुत पॉलिटिकल है, उनको बहुत हिला देगा कि आप, you know, despite all these difficulties, you're still smiling. So I mean, I thought that was a beautiful thought. But suicide prevention के webinar में बैठकर ये कहना कि suicide can be a मतलब लग ही सकता है कि ये legitimate response है, और अगर आपको लगता है या किसी को लगता है तो है legitimate response आपके लिए. I think it's just a question of हम कौन है जो इस बात का जवाब दे रहे हैं. मतलब मुझे ये सवाल पूछा गया है कि crisis intervention जब आप कर रहे हैं, that is it necessary to intervene every time in crisis, because किसी का ये choice हो सकता है ना, if someone wants to die by suicide, that's their choice, and who are you to intervene? And the only response is actually कि उस वक्त अगर आप जैसे someone who's mental health trained, who's a crisis intervention person, मेरा ये काम हमेशा रहेगा ये कहना कि suicide एक तरह से एक समय का बात है, वो एक impulse है, वो एक बहुत beautifully दीपा पवार ने पिछले उसमें कहा था कि suicide is a journey, and so she says that actually when you're taking this journey, बीच-बीच में बहुत सारे लोग मिलते हैं जो शायद आपको उसके तरफ धकेलेंगे या फिर आपको कोई रोक लेगा. शायद वो एक बात हो, एक मुस्कुराहट हो, एक गाना सुनना हो, कुछ भी हो, उस समय के लिए वो टल जाए तो फिर वो टल जाता है. So I think it's difficult to respond ki is this a right? Of course it can be a right, like Daksh said, that you have a right to do what you want to do, and that you will do anyway, irrespective of what any of us is saying. But I think वही है कि हम जो बोल रहे हैं वो इस जगह से बोल रहे हैं कि हमने भी बहुत सारे लोगों ने ये सोचा है और अच्छा लगता है आज कि उसको कुछ किया नहीं उस वक्त. So yeah, just that.
Thanks, KP. And also, I think just to add to what KP was saying, कि उस पल में कभी लगता है कि और कोई तरीका है नहीं, और वो पल गुजर जाए और फिर नए रास्ते दिख जाते हैं. और आई थिंक एक ये वेबिनार करने का ये भी उद्देश्य है कि हम जो अलग रास्ते हैं उसके बारे में सोचें, डिस्कस करें और नए रास्ते बनाएं, क्योंकि रास्ते बन सकते हैं, ये नहीं कि बन नहीं सकते. So there is always that possibility, that hope that you will move beyond that moment and something new will open up for you.
If you allow me, so I just want to do a motivational rap which I wrote. It is in Hindi. खुशी का ठिकाना नहीं, खुशी का ठिकाना नहीं, आज पहक जाना नहीं, मंजिल खुद बनाई जो बीच में रुक जाना नहीं, सारी परेशानियां हवा में तुम उछाल दो, भरोसा रखो खुद पे, सपनों को उड़ान दो, डर किस बात का, हर काली रात का, सपनों की किरण ये करेगी पूरा खात्मा, जुनू का तूफान तू अपने जहन में उतार ले, तू है एक नदी चाहे पहाड़ को भी काट दे, तू है एक नदी चाहे पहाड़ को भी काट दे. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Daksh. That was brilliant. That was really brilliant. We have one comment from the audience and then we can wrap up. Not a question, but would want to say that rather providing help to community, help should be provided to society's thinking, acceptance being the first step. And secondly, suicide is a decision. But before that decision, a lot of non-verbal communication happens, which people around can listen to and provide help. Thank you for that comment. It's time up. Daksh, I'm assuming that was your final message. KP and Neeraj, if you have one final message for our audience, and then we can end.
Yeah, my final message is that create yourself, don't suicide. Life is very precious and you can be a creator of yourself so that people will remember you after your death as well. Don't do suicide. And thank you.
I think I'll also just say thanks, and thanks for having me. And it's always an opportunity, like a great opportunity for me to personally share a panel with KP. So I think because I think it's just when you share a panel with your professor and a research guide, that means that you have made it. It's see so I think it just sort of gives me a lot of life and hope also for me. So, and thank you everybody for attending and listening, and thank you Daksh for taking and sharing your story. It has been really, really inspiring, and I'm looking forward you to become a good rapper, and looking forward to your album and everything. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you so much.
I just want to say thanks again to all three of you actually, Daksh, Neeraj, Arjun. I think what I'm going to take away from today, more than leaving a message here, is the idea of being a creator of yourself. I mean, I think it's just floored by that idea about giving birth to yourself, creating yourself. It's just such a मतलब इतना uplifting है, जैसे मतलब बहुत सारा भार उठ गया ऐसे लगता है. Daksh, so शुक्रिया उस लफ्ज़ों के लिए. और नीरज, of course you are मतलब I mean you embarrass me with all this stuff about being my student, etc. But thank you for all the work you are doing. What I take from you today is this thing about smile is political. I think it's really powerful. Thank you for saying that. And yeah, for all the amazing work that you're doing as well. I mean, the support you're providing with Project Unsound and all this peer support work that's happening. So thank you for that. Arjun, thanks so much for keeping us. I think we've like really overshot time, but thank you for all those questions and sort of keeping us going, all three of us, getting us going in this conversation. Thanks to Sangath and Center for Mental Health Law and Policy.
Thank you, KP. Thank you, Neeraj. Thank you, Daksh. Can't be thankful enough. This was extremely inspiring, extremely uplifting, as KP said, and definitely, I completely agree. The takeaway message is you are the creator of your own life. So nothing more powerful than that. Thank you all once again, and thanks to Sangath for organizing this, and thank you to the audience for being a part of this session. Thank you.
Thank you.